When we work on a big creative project like the memoir my guest Bella Mahaya Carter is working on, we don't have to do it alone. You'll hear Bella share that early on in the writing of this book, she made an arrangement with an editor to have a deadline each month where Bella would submit 1,000 words to the editor. And as you'll hear Bella say, at the beginning of every month, she thought she would never be able to get those 1,000 words written. But she did, every time. She's been doing that for nearly 4 years, making those 1,000 word submissions monthly. And now her book, this really big multi-layered project, is very close to being finished. I think this is a great example of the truth in the saying that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, something that's so important for creative people to remember. I'm Alexandra Amor. This is episode 5 of Creative Alchemy. Welcome to Creative Alchemy. I'm your host, Alexandra Amor. I'm an author, a writing and publishing coach, and a cult survivor. This is the podcast where my guests and I explore the healing properties of creative expression. In each episode, we discuss how creativity can help us alchemize trauma into something meaningful and something that may even help others. You'll find episode show notes, transcriptions, your complimentary Creative Alchemy journaling handbook, and lots more at creativealchemypodcast.com. And now, here's the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Creative Alchemy. I'm so happy that you're here. One of the other themes of today's show is definitely accountability and getting support to hold ourselves accountable for the creative projects that we want to complete. Bella Mahaya Carter is an experienced writer and writing teacher. In this episode, she shares how she used the support of an editor, as I said in the intro, to meet that small 1,000 words per month goal as a way to break the enormous task of writing a memoir into small, achievable steps. We also briefly touch on the other support system that Bella and I both have, which is a mastermind group that we belong to. Bella herself started this group in late 2019 as a way for women writers to get together and support one another. That group has been one of the joys of my life for the last nearly 7 years. Several books have been written and published while that group has been going on, including Bella's book about writing, Where Do You Hang Your Hammock? I highlight these things because I think it's so important for writers of any level of experience to know that we can create these support systems and situations for ourselves. So yes, we can join writing groups and take writing classes, both of which are incredibly helpful. And it's important to remember that if you can't find the type of class or group or support system that you're looking for, you can think outside the box. What is it that you need to complete or even to start your creative project? Bella needed to break her enormous and emotional undertaking of writing this family memoir about secrets and motherhood into small steps, so she found a way to do that. And I remember when she was looking for an editor to form this partnership with her, it took a couple of tries. She had the idea, and then it took a minute for her to find the right editor who was willing to do this for her and who was a good fit with her. She had a couple of false starts with a couple of editors who weren't quite the right fit, and then she found someone who was the right fit, and they've been working together ever since. I personally have used all sorts of strategies to help me get my writing done. I've met friends in coffee shops so that we could write together. I've belonged to several writing groups where we support and encourage one another. I've set daily word counts. When I had an office job a million years ago in downtown Vancouver, I would book a meeting room that the company had governance over, and book it for about 45 minutes on my lunch break. And I would go in there at lunchtime and write. And when I had a different job in downtown Vancouver, I would get to work an hour early and sit in the cafeteria and write because that worked for me at that time. The cafeteria was quiet early in the day, there was nobody there, and I was usually the only person in there. So it was a really good environment to write in. And then I just found my mind quieted down a little bit more. If I could have used that hour and written at home, right? But when I did that, I found that there was a part of my brain that was like, oh, remember, even if I had an alarm set on my phone, remember, you have to pack your bag and pack your lunch and get on the bus and make sure that you get downtown in time. So when I did all that stuff first and then had the hour to write in the cafeteria, I just found that my mind was a little bit quieter, a little bit less hypervigilant about time, which it tends to be. So I would love for you to listen to this episode and then ask yourself, what is it that you need in order to start or to continue your creative project, or the project that you've been thinking about? What would support you to get that project done or even started? And the answer doesn't have to be traditional. It doesn't have to be prescribed by anyone else. You can be creative about your creativity and how it gets done. And the second thing I want to emphasize in this introduction is that Bella and I touch on the point that for many of us, writing may be the first time we tell the truth about an experience. And I know for sure that that was the case with me. When I was involved with the cult that I was part of in the 1990s, writing in my journal was the one place I could feel safe to tell, if not the full truth, because of course I was mind controlled at the time, then I could at least entertain the idea of the truth of what I was feeling. I could just tiptoe up to that truth that, say, for example, I was being manipulated, or the truth that I was feeling that I wasn't comfortable with how the leader of the cult, I didn't call it a cult at the time, but how the leader of the group treated people. It was just a very safe way for me to do that because nobody else read my journal, and I could really dip my toe in what it felt like to say the dangerous thing. And that was really, really helpful for me. Journaling can seem like such a simple act. It's an inexpensive notebook and a pen and a few thoughts or ideas that you have. But man, the truth is a powerful force, and we can find that truth for ourselves in something as simple as a journal entry. Never underestimate the quiet healing and the power of a journal entry. On that note, I wanted to say that this episode of Creative Alchemy is supported by the free journaling guide that's available at my website. How do you like that segue? You can go to alexandraamor.com to get your complimentary copy of the guide that I've written all about how journaling can support you, especially after a difficult or traumatic experience. And part of the book offers a little over 50 journaling prompts to inspire you and give you a launch pad for exploring your thoughts and feelings in journaling form, if that's something that you need. Your free copy awaits at alexandraamor.com. That's ALEXANDRAAMOR.com. And now, here's my interview with my friend Bella. Bella Mahaya Carter, welcome to Creative Alchemy.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Great to have you here. So, give us a little bit about your background, Bella, maybe your education and your writing background.
Okay, I'll start with my education. My post-secondary school education started at the Juilliard School. I was a dancer, and I had a back injury and had to stop dancing. And went to college at Scripps College in Claremont, California, which is a small liberal arts college for women. And after that, I actually went to film school at USC, the School of Cinematic Arts. And I got a Master of Fine Arts degree in filmmaking with an emphasis in screenwriting. I taught in the screenwriting department as a teaching assistant. And And then 10 years went by and I did a lot of writing. And then I went back to school for another master's degree in spiritual psychology. And that really changed my life, that work. So that's my educational. I went to the University of Santa Monica in Santa Monica. So that's my educational background. My writing background is I really didn't know I was a writer until when I went to Scripps College. Well, I didn't even know I was a writer then, but what really be, I was a dancer and I wasn't a great reader. I think I had some maybe dyslexia or some kind of neurodivergency. So I wasn't a reader as a kid, which just makes me so sad even now to this day. But um, but I discovered Shakespeare in college. And I thought, how could somebody write plays in poetry? And I just loved it. I used to listen to the records while reading my Pelican Shakespeare in the library for hours. I could lose myself just listening to the language and the poetry, and I knew that I loved it. And then I took another class with that same teacher on contemporary women writers, and just just loved it, loved it, loved it. But I didn't know I was a writer yet. I went to film school because I thought, well, my background is dance, and now I'm interested in literature. And I thought, well, maybe combining dance and literature, I could find my way through movie making. And I was in Los Angeles. But but what I discovered in film school, I was one of maybe five women in the program. It was a very male dominated environment. And I thought also, I don't really like Hollywood that much. So around that time, I stumbled into a creative writing workshop, and I remember that the teacher, he was teaching a UCLA extension class, his name was Jack Grapes, and he wrote this incredible poem about menstruation. He read it. And I thought to myself, any man who could write about menstruation in that way is someone I think I would like to study with. And I studied with Jack for 5 years, and that was just the beginning of many, many years of writing. I haven't stopped writing since.
Nice. Oh, that's great. And you're the author of several books, including a memoir called Raw about, oh, my mind is going blank. Anxiety.
Yeah, my three books are right behind me.
Okay,
There's
great. Yeah.
Secrets of My Sex, which is a collection of poems. And there's Raw, My Journey from Anxiety to Joy. And there's Where Do You Hang Your Hammock? Finding Peace of Mind While You Write, Publish, and Promote Your Book.
Right. And we're going to come back to your writing classes and that kind of thing in just a minute, but I want to start with the project you've been working on for the last couple of years. So tell us about that. This
You mean my whole life?
Yeah, yes, yes, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, tell us about that project. Start wherever you want.
My current project is called Ripe, a memoir of the lives we carry. And um, I kind of officially started writing it over 35 years ago. And but I really there were whispers of family secrets and a rupture that had happened in our family. And my mom was a great researcher, and she always would whisper some of the family stories to me, not all of them. The rest of them took me years to learn, but um, but this seed was always planted. My grandfather was a poet and a journalist, so I think it was kind of in my blood. Um, but I wrote this 500-page mess of a manuscript 35 years ago. Didn't know what to do with it, so I put it away in my file cabinet. And at around that time, I was also thinking about becoming a mother. And really what the book is about, it's a memoir about what we inherit and what we choose to carry forward. And I think the question that is at the heart of the memoir is, for me, was how do I create life without surrendering my own or perpetuating inherited pain? And though I didn't have the writing skills or the maturity or the experience and many other things to write that project in my 30s, um, I discovered about 4 years ago that I was revisiting that project. I had discovered the 100-word story format, fell in love with concise forms and started mining two manuscripts I had. One was a manuscript about my high risk pregnancy. The other was a manuscript about the ancestor story. And I just started plucking from those manuscripts. And then after about 2 years of doing that, I thought I'm going to ask my publisher at She Writes Press if she thinks this is a viable way to approach a memoir, because it was in micro and flash stories. So the stories could be anywhere from 50 words to 1,000 words. And when I showed it to her, she loved it. She said, I think this is the future of memoir because we have shorter attention spans. I think that this hybrid form is going to be very, very popular. So that was in May of 2024. And I'm almost done. Out of the 200 stories, I think I have about 8 left to write.
Wow. And it sounds like you had a plan. Like if you know how many stories are left, what's that based on?
Well, actually, I just figured that out today.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I knew I kind of had a rough idea of what material I needed to cover at the end. And I was, as I am at the beginning of every month. So at the end of every month, I send my editor at least a minimum of 1,000 words. And then I start fresh on the next journey, the next series of chapters. And so in the beginning of the month, I'm always like, I'm never going to make my deadline. I don't know how I'm going to do this. But because what happens is I dig into archives. I have family, like last month, I read 32 letters written by my great grandmother in 1961, and I had to create one composite letter conveying her experience, like a literary piece, rather than just using her letters. And this month, the end of the story is my experience with the repair of the family. And so I actually read yesterday my journal from when I was in Italy in 1994 with my mother, meeting the family and discovering my great great grandfather's diary and other primary source materials. So it wasn't until this morning after I read my journal from that trip, and then I was writing in my journal that the structure for the things that I want to cover emerged. And so just today I realized, oh, I have about 8 more stories left.
Amazing, amazing. So, for our listeners, we should explain this is such a unique project in my mind because it's you have all this archival material. So, yeah, tell our listeners a little bit about you've mentioned your grandmother's letters, or was it great grandmother? Great
Yeah.
grandmother. Yeah, what else have you got?
What happened was in 1918, my great grandfather, who was a doctor, he lived in New Haven, Connecticut. Um, he got the family servant pregnant and performed an illegal abortion on her and was arrested, jumped bail, and left. Like he went to New York and disappeared because he was fugitive. And and then various things happened, but a year later, his wife divorced him, which was, this was an Italian Catholic family, so divorce was pretty much unheard of and shameful, and people whispered. And after the divorce was granted, um, the my great grandfather, his custody had been awarded to my great grandmother, and very soon after, he kidnapped his son, returned to Italy because he was from Italy, and when the authorities caught up with him in Italy, he escaped to Argentina, where he raised his son. They stayed there for 10 years, on the lam. They were hiding from the law. And it just goes on and on. So the story, I thought I was writing the story of the rupture that occurred in our family. But as I started reading letters from my mother, my grandmother, my grandmother's brother, my great grandfather, though nobody spoke about what went on, everybody felt the need to write their version of it for posterity. So what I've learned over the last maybe 8 months is that I'm writing a story not only of rupture, but of repair, because only half the story is the rupture. The other half of the story is how the family found its way back together again.
Mm, wow. And you mentioned there about one of the theses of the book is whether or not we carry trauma forward.
Well, this is why, I had originally in my 30s written two books. One was the family story, one was my pregnancy story. And it was really an exploration of, trying to like, how do I maintain my identity as a person, as a creative artist, and then also be a mom. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't see that model. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say I didn't see it modeled. I did see it modeled, but I was really worried about it. I was like, how am I going to do that? And how am I going to not pass on the pain that I felt? Even though I couldn't really at that time articulate what the pain was, I just knew it was like painful to be alive. And do I really want my child to experience that? So it wasn't until a few years ago that when I started plucking stories from both manuscripts that I realized, oh, wow, this should be a braided narrative. These two books, and I had written like, I was a very inexperienced writer. So the manuscripts were a mess. They were kitchen sinks. They had some overlapping stories and stuff. So I just realized, oh, I could braid these two narratives like, because they're commenting on each other. One is the story of being afraid to get pregnant and then finally deciding to get pregnant and then realizing, and for 3 years I couldn't get pregnant, and then finally getting pregnant and having the doctor, call it a geriatric pregnancy, because I was 36, and then it was all so much of it was about claiming agency over my own life and my own experience, because 4 months, 5 months into the pregnancy, I just felt like I was like a lamb being led to the slaughter. I felt like I had no choice about how things were done. And I thought, you know what? I want to have a natural childbirth. I don't want this. And but unfortunately, my insurance company said, you have a pre-existing condition, pregnancy. You can't do that. But I did do it. I did do it. And I practiced throughout the pregnancy, having some agency over that experience while I was flashing back to the ancestral story as it was unfolding.
Mm, amazing. And so tell us a little bit about the challenges you've encountered. And I think you've touched on this already. You tried writing the book 35 years ago. That was maybe one challenge, but and what have the others been?
Oh, there have been so many challenges. I mean, I think the biggest challenge was me. Me, because I just always felt like I wasn't good enough. And one component of the book that I haven't mentioned is that the it is the repercussions that my grandparents' lives had on the succeeding generations. Like my grandmother also had a very turbulent relationship. My mother was molested by her father when she was a child. My mother married a man who was abusive, and so there were just ripples of this problem that went all the way down through the generations up until my generation. And so part of what I learned as a small child, who was beaten sometimes, was I'm bad. And I think I learned very early on to um, to be an excellent people pleaser and to not really listen to myself so much as to just pay attention, to read the room, figure out what you need to do to so that the shit doesn't hit the fan. So, and that I think that the kind of spilled into my writing with questions like, who do you think you are? What makes you think you can be a writer? You know, so I think that was the hardest thing. And the reason why I said my USM education in spiritual psychology was the most profound for me was, I mean, it was all profound, but that was particularly profound. It really, I entered that at the age of 40 something, early 40s, thinking that I had failed, that my life was a failure because I had 5 manuscripts in my file cabinet that hadn't gone anywhere. And I just thought, wow, like if I'm not sure what I, I remember when had to stop dancing and my identity was so tied up with being a dancer. And it was like, well, if I'm not a dancer, who am I? And it took me some years. And then I kind of glommed onto this idea that I'm a writer. But I think what I learned in that program is that we are not what we do. We are spiritual beings having a human experience, and and there's no such thing as failure. There are only opportunities for growth.
Mm. Oh, nicely said. And I imagine that feelings come up as you're reading this archival material that you've got, and as is there some processing that goes on? What do you do about that?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's funny because just today I had a little moment with my husband, a little bit moment of conflict because I don't know, I mentioned something about the pain, and his immediate response was, "Oh, but there was lots of love too." And I said, "No, no, no, you don't understand. We have to make space for the pain. We have to acknowledge the pain." Part of the interesting thing about this story is that it wasn't spoken. No one talked about it. It wasn't acknowledged. The pain, the harm that was done was not acknowledged. So it's not like I want to harp on the pain because there was a ton of creativity and love and music and joy. But to not acknowledge the pain perpetuates it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so have you specifically ever bumped into things like, has it brought up big feelings for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have all sorts of ways of dealing with big feelings. I mean, I work in my journal, and I hesitate to say I work in my journal. I would rather say I listen in my journal. And the force that I listen to is the 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 aspect of myself that I call my wise self. And so when I show up there, I get guidance from a source that is greater than me, that is not the little complaining, worried person that I can be. It's a, um, it's an eternal presence that resides within us all, I believe.
Hmm.
So
And
that
how do
helps.
you,
And
sorry,
I
go
do
ahead.
other things too. I also move. Like I never, I mean, I'm still a dancer, even though I don't dance in that way. I like to move I like to put on music. I like to move my body and let my body, like I just listen with my body, and then I'll just move, like I'll try to move energy and release stuff that's in my body that I can feel in my body.
Mm.
And I
Oh.
practice yoga and I do Reiki and I do massages. Like I have practices that I engage in regularly to help me release.
Hmm. Nice. And so going back to this, the wise self that you talk to in your journal, can you take us through what that looks like? What do you do to access that part of yourself?
I just sit down with my journal. I just show up and then I just start complaining. And then and then eventually the wise self shows up. It doesn't take long. And then the wise self will start speaking, in the second person. I've been complaining in the first person, and the wise person will say, "Bella, you just relax, slow down. It's okay. Like, give yourself a break. You don't have to be perfect. You can just, like, look at what you've been dealing with. You've been traveling with your mother in Italy, and she can be very challenging sometimes. And, I'm sure you're just as challenging to her, just like chill." So it just, and then I'll realize, oh yeah, I'm reminded. And if I have questions, I'll ask questions. For a long time, I did left-handed writing because was forced to slow down when I wrote with my left hand, non-dominant handwriting.
Hmm.
Because that way I was forced to slow down and listen. Um, but yeah, I ask a lot of questions and I just try to listen. And, that it's just there always for all of us, but I think most of us, we don't know that it's there. We don't know that we can access this wisdom within, and that it is there and it does guide us and it doesn't care about the things that we think are such big deals in our lives. I didn't get what I wanted. Oh, it's a something much larger. And knowing that's there, just means that I'm kind of okay no matter what.
Mm, yeah, I love that. And have you, writing this big project, this family history interwoven with your pregnancy, um, have you ever had any moments where you hit the wall, didn't know where to go or what to do next?
I mean, obviously when I remember when I wrote the pregnancy book, oh my gosh, this is like this so I was so naive. I can remember I actually sent it out to some agents, just the pregnancy book. And I mean, it was a first draft. It wasn't even a
Yes.
first draft. It was like, and I remember like it got returned to me and it would sit on my step and I would walk in my gate and I'd be like, I hope nobody sees this. I hope nobody knows that I'm a failed writer. Like I felt so much shame around it. But I didn't have any idea that there were like certain prerequisites that I had to fulfill in order to complete a project of this scope. And so I thought I was failing, failing, failing. But in fact, when I read, I actually have it right here on my desk. I had this is my journal from when I was in Italy. It says summer 1994. I had made a paper collage over it. And as I was reading yesterday, the paper it's so old, it was just peeling off. So I just had to peel it all off. I took pictures of it. But I didn't know. It wasn't no, you're not good enough. It was not yet.
Right.
Not not yet. And the number of not yets, like I didn't know they were not yets. I just thought it was no, 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 you suck. You're not good enough. Why are you trying? I didn't know um that I mean I knew I was on my path, but I kind of hoped that I could gain some recognition or be seen and what I've realized is being seen and getting recognition, it's just an inside job because you never know where your writing's going to go, and there's like I don't know, a million books, more than a million books published every day in America. So my joy right now is working on this project and I almost don't want it to end because I know what comes next. I know then it's okay, publishing decisions and marketing and all that publicity and I'm loving the writing so much. I'm loving the discovery. And I'm also feeling like I got to be with my mom in Rome in 1948 and my grandmother in 1950 and my great, like I feel like I'm knowing parts of my ancestors that I never knew before. And so I feel just so rich.
Mm.
That's the reason. I mean, that's substantial. Like I don't think anything that could happen after I'm done writing this could be as profound as that. That's the gift.
I was just going to say that is such a gift. That's amazing. One of the things that I really admire about you, because for the listeners, we're in a mastermind group and together, and we have been for 6 or 7 years, maybe now at this point, um, is that you have held this project so lightly, it seems to me, and have let it evolve as it wanted to. And I guess one of the things that I saw was you mentioned writing in the micro and flash fiction. And at the time, I thought,
It's nonfiction, but it's
oh,
micro
sorry,
and flat.
nonfiction. Yeah, micro and flash. Um, you you started to learn about that format and then realized that was the direction that you wanted to take for the book. And this question might be a little bit vague, but can you talk about the balance between having a clear vision for a project and also letting it evolve if it wants to?
So here's what I've learned about, I love this question, by the way. Here's what I've learned is that you must begin before you feel ready.
Ah, yes.
Every month for the last well, maybe the whole time I've been working with my editor, which is since 2024, no, 2022. So it's been 4 years I've been working on this with her. Every time at the beginning of a new month, when I go back to my archives and I'm like, I have a general idea where, like just today, I didn't know, I didn't have the outline. I didn't have a clear outline to the end of the ancestral story. I wrote the pregnancy story some time ago. I've been working on the ancestral story. And then when it's done, I'll weave them. But I what I've learned is that the thing about the creative process is that you just have to have faith that even though you don't know where you're going, or you just have a hazy glimmer of where you might be going, you have to do it anyway. You have to just start. And I always think of that great E.L. Doctorow quote, the American novelist. Writing a novel is like driving on a mountain road at night. You know, you can only see as far as your headlights illuminate. Same thing with writing. You just look at what's right in front of you. What's the next thing that you need to do? And like for me yesterday, I wasn't sure what the next thing was. I was like, oh, the next thing is read your journal from Italy in 1994. And then I did that and I was like, oh my God. And then it was like, what's the next thing? I got to write about this in my journal. I didn't know this morning when I wrote in my journal that the outline for the rest of the ancestral story would emerge. I had no idea. So I never know really. I mean, even when I work with outlines, like for Raw, my journey from anxiety to joy, um, I remember when I first started that project, my editor wanted me to outline it. And I thought, okay, I was pretty clear. Raw is divided into three sections: body, mind, and spirit. And I pretty much knew the body story and I knew the mind story. But what I didn't know was that I hadn't yet lived the spirit story. That spiritual ship was going to come and hit the fan while I was working. So, so I fudged it in the outline and I did the best I could. And then as I was writing, actually in the middle of that project, we had 5 family deaths in 3 years. And I was the executor of my mom's estate, and it was contentious. And I developed an anxiety disorder, and I was scared to leave my house. And I really didn't know that I had kind of been suffering with the low grade anxiety for most of my life until it exploded and became a full on disorder that made me dysfunctional. So, but kind of in that time, I also had some mystical experiences that showed me who I really am and what really matters. And once I lived through that, I completely revised my outline for the last section of the book. So I think so, you know, I people say, are you a plotter or a pantser? You know, do you plot an outline or do you just fly by the seat of your pants? And I would say that I do both. I really love structure, but I also like to wander. And I think both for me, my writing is served both wandering and also figuring out what the structure is. And usually after a while, the structure just emerges like it did this morning when I was working in my journal.
Hmm. Yes. Oh, so well said. And I love that. Uh, yeah, that things will, or no, you said begin, begin almost before you're ready. Like,
Almost. Just begin before you're ready.
yes, 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 exactly.
And just have faith. Just trust the process. The process, whatever it is I tell this to my students all the time, whatever the big trick is to get out of your own way so that what wants to come through you is free to come through you. That's that's the trick. And to not worry so much about what it is, because eventually it will announce itself, like this project announced itself 2 years ago when I realized, I've been pulling stories from both of these manuscripts. I wonder if I could combine these two manuscripts and make it one manuscript instead of like two horribly long kitchen sink manuscripts that meander in every which direction. What if I just plucked and chiseled and polished each story and presented it that way?
Hmm.
And it's a mosaic, and it's beautiful because each story stands on its own and has its own narrative, but then it's also part of a larger story.
And I think this project is such a good example of the right time and place. So 35 years ago, obviously you weren't the writer that you are now, and you hadn't learned all the things that you've learned now at this point in your life. And I just think it's so great that we can come back to these things. If it's not the right time, then it'll be the right time later, maybe.
So maybe or maybe not. Oh, I'm just reading this book by Elizabeth Jarrett Andrew. I don't know if you know her. She's a wonderful writer. It's something about, I meant to bring it with me and have it here for the interview, but because I knew it was going to come up because I've been reading it. It's on my mind. But she says that it's valuable to write, even if you don't want to publish.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I hadn't picked up this manuscript, working on it the way I did for a decade, I worked on it for a decade in my 30s. That changed me. That grew me. So even if we don't publish our work, it doesn't make the writing any less valuable.
No, absolutely. I totally agree. Yes, because as you say, I believe this too. It's what's happening to us as we're writing it that actually matters.
Exactly.
The end result is a nice cherry on top, but yeah, what really matters is what happens to
Yeah,
us.
because really at the end of the day, the writing writes us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's true
Well,
with dance too. When I dance, the dancing is it's dancing me.
nice. Oh, that's lovely. So that's a great segue. Let's talk about you are a writing teacher and you've been doing that for a while. What have you noticed about the healing that takes place with your students when they write?
Okay, well, first let's just break that up into two pieces. Maybe the first piece is I thought you were going to ask me, what do you notice in your students? Because you're a writing teacher, what do you notice in your students, just in a more general way? Because we'll get to the healing. That's, I think, for me, that's part B of the question. So part A of the question is the first thing that I notice is that most people don't recognize their own gifts. And most people engaged in a creative endeavor that involves vulnerability and self-expression, or that involves self-expression which necessitates vulnerability, they need to feel safe.
Mm,
They need to understand that it's a sacred process. And they need to be held and supported and loved, period. That's the first thing. Um, in terms of growth as a writer, anytime anybody wants critical feedback, they can receive that, but only if they ask for it. And there's many ways to learn. I personally don't think that um, heavy criticism is the best way to teach people how to learn how to write. I think people need to feel free and unencumbered and celebrated. So when that happens, I'm segueing to part B. When that happens, people realize that all the things that they thought they couldn't say, they can say. And when that happens, people are starting to connect with the divine, eternal wisdom that they have inside of themselves. And that is healing, because that divine, eternal wisdom knows a lot more than we do. And that's what I mean when I say, get out of your own, I help people get out of their own way.
and what are some ways that you do that?
I do that by setting ground rules, such as when someone's done reading, I'm going to ask the group, what did you appreciate about what you heard? And you're only allowed to say what you appreciated. You're not allowed to make suggestions for improvement. You're not allowed to say parts that were confusing. You're not allowed to, make any helpful comments. You're only allowed to say what you appreciated about what you heard. And then then there's small groups, anywhere from 6 to 8 people in a group. Um, and then usually every person in the group gets a chance to say what they appreciated. And that creates trust in the group. It's not like, oh, that person didn't speak. No, it's like everybody says what they appreciated. And you can always find something to appreciate. Even from the most beginning writer, there's always something to appreciate. So I cultivate in my students an ear for listening for what they appreciate. Then I ask the writer, do you have any questions? And then the writer can say, oh, did it make sense when I did X, Y, and Z? Or was it confusing when I spoke about this? Or do you have any suggestions for improving the language? But a lot of times people just say, no, I'm good. And that's fine. And they learn from each other. They learn from the conversations, and it's a powerful environment. It's called Right Where You Are. And yeah, I've been teaching for over 20 years and have helped hundreds of writers, and many of them have gone on to publish books and become authors and healers and leaders in their communities.
Mm.
And that work, I will say this about that work. So one time I was having a conversation with this writer. I think this was before became a writing teacher and coach. I thought I had to wait till I had a book published before I could teach writing, which now that I look back, I didn't need to do that. I could have still taught writing, but I felt like I needed. So I waited longer than I needed to. Um, but um, but this woman said to me, I'll never forget. She said, "You, madam, are a natural born coach." And I remember thinking, huh. And that was years before I became one. But um, I think the reason is I see I do see the sort of divine spark in everybody that I work with, and I I unlike writing, which was the skill, the craft of writing, took me my whole life to practice and learn. I do have a God-given gift, or I don't know if you want to use the word God, but I do have a gift that comes to me from the universe that just I understand what people need. Maybe it's because I did live in that household that was violent and difficult, and I had to, in order to stay alive, I had to be really perceptive about what was going on. So I'm sensitive and intuitive, and I can tell what each person needs, and one person needs is different from what another person needs. And I just tune into that. And this is the reason why I don't write in my writing circles myself. I know the Amherst method says, you got to show your students you're one of them, you're just like them, you're a writer too. But I find that my writer self is too insecure, I can't focus on my writer. I can't like show up as my writer self and then also do this thing with where I tune into people and guide them. To me, those are just two different lives. So I don't write with my students. I focus all my attention on their growth and upliftment and yeah, growth and upliftment.
I love the point you brought up there that writing is an opportunity to tell the truth. And I'm sure you encounter that sometimes it's the first time a person has told the truth about an experience that they've had.
Yeah, and many people have been ghosted. Many people, is that the right word? Ghosted? I feel like that. I'm wondering if that's the right word. Huh. Well, it doesn't matter. Many people show up having no idea even what their truth is.
Yes. So they get, yeah. So even just writing in a journal is an opportunity to tell the truth. Yeah.
And an opportunity to tell the truth and to connect with the small, quiet voice within, which is the voice of wisdom. And many people, once they come to the circles, they stay. They stay
Mhm.
for a long time. There's every 8 weeks, we complete a round. But I have a student who's been with me for 10 years. I have students who've been with me 3 years, 5 years. So I think people are hungry for the freedom of a small supportive community that can hold space for them while they explore whatever it is they need to explore on the page.
I'm just having a huge epiphany right now while we're talking about how, yeah, just how writing is sometimes the first time a person will slow down enough and yeah, tell the truth, even if it's just to themselves about an experience that they've had and how valuable that's been in my life and in others' lives that I've seen. And yeah, what a gift that you are able to support people to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
lovely.
And I feel like actually the gift was given to me. And I'm just, I think the best kind of gifts are the ones that energetically keep moving.
Yes, nicely said. Yes, yeah, exactly. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about where we can, speaking of your writing circles, tell us where we can find out more about you and your work.
Yeah, my website is BellaMahayaCarter.com, BellaMahayaCarter.com, and it has my writing there, my publications, my writing circles, coaching information. It's all there. I also write a monthly Substack newsletter called Flying Lessons for Writers. And I try each month to write something that I feel very connected to that I think will inspire other writers
Great.
to fly both on the page and in their lives. Because I am interested very much in writing. I love writing and I love the craft of writing and I love to help people become better writers and I'm constantly trying myself to become a better writer. And I'm equally fascinated in becoming um, as large and authentic a human being as possible. And I'm equally interested in facilitating that process in others through the medium of writing.
Great. Awesome. Well, I will put links to all those things in the show notes so people can find you and your work. And yeah, this has been a real pleasure, Bella. Is there anything else you wanted to share before we wrap up?
Let's see. Gosh, this time went fast.
I know, right? Yeah.
It went fast. I don't think so. I think I guess I just want to say thank you for having me on your show. I'm excited to watch all of your interviews.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right. Well, take care and I will see you soon.
All right, take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. I hope you found the show helpful and uplifting. You'll find all the backlist episodes and show notes at creativealchemypodcast.com. To learn more about how to use journaling as part of your healing toolkit after a cult or other traumatic experience, get your complimentary copy of the Creative Alchemy Journaling Handbook at alexandraamore.com/alchemy. See you next time.